further ado, I present to you none other than Mr. Frederick Douglass. I got a seat down here for you. Run rough. Being late. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, let you know, I thought it was supposed to be winter. I thought it was supposed to be snow. It's hot as diggers down here. Anyway, I want to first of all say thank you to the staff. Thank you to you all for coming out, spending some time here and learn about one of my heroes, Frederick Douglass. Just to start out, the question is always presented, so I'll go ahead and answer that question after I do a formal introduction of myself. Donald L. Dowridge Jr. is my name. And I arrived from Baltimore, Maryland. That's where I was born. Where we are today in today's society, as a child, I came through 5 tumultuous, painful, agony, foster homes. I work with children, youth, when I'm not doing Frederick Douglass. And a lot of the youth that I work with come out of that same type of environment. Fortunately for them, today, they have the awakening services that is willing and waiting to capture them. I came out of foster home when I was 12. And to tell my age, that was back in 1968. Everybody here looked like you all were just born, so you're not familiar with that year. My biological father retrieved me from foster care, took me to the South Bronx, where I stayed until I was 17. Unfortunately, my biological father continued to abuse me every way but this, which took me out to street life, where I became, for a lesser word, gangbanger. And I rose in that gang that I was in, and this is pre-Crips and Bloods, etc., etc. I became the vice president of one of the most notorious gangs at that time, the Black Spades. Because of the love I couldn't find at home, I found myself at 13 years old in a place called Rikers Island, which is a male's facility, adult. I was there at 13. And everybody had given up hope on me. Well, I'll let you know this, and then I'll go on into the presentation. December of this year will mark 30 years. And not to step on anybody's personality, if you will mark 30 years that I got on my knees. And I prayed and I said, Lord, if I got to die, let me die being somebody. So that was the beginning of the transformation. From then to who I am today. And who I am today, I am the president and founder of DLD Enterprises, which is determined to learn and develop. Frederick Douglass did a lot of firsts. I did some firsts in my life as well. I became the first black to be a manager at the United States Post Office in Tampa. I became the first black, if you will, to perform James Bond at the Florida State Fair. Entertainment is my life. I love entertaining, thanks to James Brown. I don't know if anybody ever heard that man. I became familiar with him on the Ed Sullivan Show. And when I saw him singing I Feel Good, I swore that was what I wanted to do with my life. But I had bumps and bruises that I had to go through. I also, in the entertainment world, I auditioned for the Temptations. I don't know if anybody heard of the Temptations. My Girl, I auditioned for them in 1996. I don't know if anybody ever heard of the show The Wire that came on HBO. I was in season 3 of The Wire. Also, Sequest. That was, matter of fact, my first outing as an actor, Sequest. My 14th book is on the way, Motivational Moments. Don't never doubt yourself or what you do. This is my 13th book, The Power of Being a Believer. So, I started doing Frederick Douglass 10 years ago. I'm on my 10th anniversary right now. Looking in the mirror, I heard Frederick Douglass, Frederick Douglass, Frederick Douglass, and I thought somebody was talking to me. However, here we are, 10 years later. And with that, I give you Frederick Douglass. Rosetta! Who's that at the door, Rosetta? Rosetta! Who? John Brown? Yeah, let him in, let him in, let him in. My friend John, how are you? What brings you here, John? Well, Frederick, I come because I am interested in taking over Harper's Valley. I believe that those slave owners, they should pay for what they're doing to black folks such as yourself. John, you sure you want to do this? I mean, you could be walking into a trap, John. You sure? Well, Frederick, one reason that I want to do this is because you are my friend, and I would love to have you go with me. John, have a seat. Have another seat, because we need to talk. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, John Brown stayed at my home for 3 weeks. I even offered to allow John Brown to stay at my house for free. But John insisted that I charge him to stay at my home for those 3 weeks. Well, because he insisted, I charged him. I charged him a mere $3 to stay at my home. $3 a week. And believe it or not, I introduced him to a lot of my distinguished friends, because he was adamant about what he was about to do. Well, because of his adamant demeanor and me inviting him to be introduced to my loyal and distinguished friends, I would say maybe after 2 meetings with some of my friends, he ran them away. Because they got bored at him constantly talking about going to Harper's Valley. Now my daughter, my oldest daughter, Rosetta, when she was a little girl, she took a liking to John. She loved all the baffling that he did. To me, it got to be kind of boring, to be honest with you. So he stayed the whole 3 weeks, and I recall one day prior to him leaving, he had left, disappeared, and I was wondering where he had disappeared to. Next thing I know, I get another knock at the door, and it's a gentleman asking me to come to go with him. So I go with him, and when I go, I see a young man sitting on the dock of the bay there, like he was fishing. Dressed like a fisherman. And I looked, and I said, wow, that figure, he looks very familiar. And he got up and he started to come to me, and I said, John? He said, shh. Don't mention my last name, I changed it. You changed it? Yes. I'm not John Brown right now. I'm John Smith. And I said, wait a minute, what's the Smith? He said, because I don't want to be detected, so I changed my name, so I go along with it. And then there was a black man with him. Young man, burly man. And he had a rifle in his hand. Well, that young man was Shields Green. I walked over to Shields and I said, Shields, please, please call this off. You're walking into a death trap. Don't let him do this. Shield's only response to me was, Mr. Douglas, I must go with the old man. I tell you, you talk about stubbornness. Well, John came over to me and he hugged me. And once he hugged me, he whispered in my ears, he said, Frederick, you will always be a friend of mine. And then he kind of backed off while he had his hands on my arms. He backed off and he said, I love you, my dear friend, but we must sail on. And I said, John, I bid of you not to. Well, as we released, last I saw of John, he was on the trailway with Shields Green and other free slaves moving on to Harpeth Valley to destroy and kill all the slave owners. Well, unfortunately, I think the battle lasted maybe about 2 days. And I have you know that my good friend John Brown was killed and he was hung. I have you know, such as today, if someone commits murder, there's a chance not only that they get life, however, that they might wind up going to the electric chair. But back in my time, there was no electric chair. However, they would hang you on the courtyard with everybody watching and clapping. The mass, and next thing you know, you're down. My friend John Brown became a martyr. He became a hero. And myself, I was kind of distraught. And the reason I was because how can a white man care more about the blacks and their freedom, and I could not do anything? So I always respected my good friend, John Brown. And immediately after this occurred, the word came to me, Frederick, you must leave. You must leave. You can't stay here. Even though indirectly you had nothing to do with this, but because of your name and who you are, they will just assume that you furnish the weapons, that you furnish the money, that you furnish the shelter, so you must leave. Well, that's what I did. I got on the next cruise ship and I made my way to England. And I have you know, it was 14 degrees. And those seas were rough. And it took us, temperature 14, and it took us 14 days to arrive in England. And when I got over there, to my amazement, I was well received. To my amazement, the doors opened up. To my amazement, I got to speak in cathedrals, I got to speak in chapels, I got to speak in assembly halls. And it was crowded to suffocation because they wanted to know about slavery here in the American South. One day I was walking, and believe it or not, as I'm walking, this little dog came up to me. And the little dog came up to me barking. So quite naturally, I stopped because I know how to carry myself when a strange dog comes. Because if you act timid, they're going to attack. So I just stood there. Well, I have you know, that dog clammed up on my leg and his tail wagging, and he looked at me in my eyes and I said to myself, I'll be doggone. I got more respect from a dog than I do from people in America, from white people in America. And that dog followed me forever, seemed like. Well, I met some very influential people like Miss Helen Richardson, Miss Stanton, and a few others, Donald O'Connell. One night we were at a social gathering. And I'll be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm networking around, I'm sipping on my little wine that they gave me out of a nice wine glass, making myself comfortable. And Miss Richardson, she stepped to me and she said, Frederick. And I'm like, yes, in my dignified manner. She says, Frederick, we have some good news for you. And I'm like, what is it? Frederick, we sent $750 to your master in America. You are for your freedom. And immediately I turned away and I just started looking up and I just had all these visions that come upon me as I'm sipping. And I'm like, freedom, freedom. And they kind of broke me out the spell because she said, then I said, no, I don't think that would be a good idea. Because my family is back in America. And there's more people that look like me that is in bondage in America. And I must go back to see what I can do to help them. So Ms. Richardson said, so be it. Well, before long, I was on that ship, heading back to America. I came back to America at that time because, yes, I was free and I had a mission. But more importantly, I came back to America because my baby girl, Annie, had passed away at the age of 10. Now, I didn't come back on a regular route. I took the long route back so that I would not be detected. And I was in the home in Rochester where we lived at the time for exactly 2 months before anybody knew that I was back home. Home. Who am I? Where did that come from? They say I was born on the Lord's plantation. The Lord's plantation is located in eastern Maryland. The Lord's plantation, which is the Richey plantation on the East Coast, housed 500 slaves. The Lord's plantation was located by the Tuckahoe near the Hillsborough River, that is. The Lord's plantation. My mother, Harriet Bailey. Harriet Bailey was per se dark as my suit. Harriet Bailey, my mother, sometimes up to 3 times a week, she would run through the woods with no shoes on, 12 miles in the midst of the night, knowing that she had to be back on that plantation 12 miles away before dawn, or else she felt the wrath of a whip. But she would come, not with electricity such as you have here, but with a candle sometimes, or maybe just the moonlight. And me as a little baby, as the word is said, that she would pick me up and she would rock me, and she would sing to me, and she would call me her little Valentine. That's where February the 14th comes into play. It is said that I was born on February the 14th, 1818. Well, here we are, 2019. That makes me 201 years old. My grandmother, Betty Bailey. Betty Bailey, she took care of my master's family, and generations before then. And I'll never forget the time that my grandmother, she walked me, seems like 20 miles, 30 miles through the woods. And sometimes she would be holding me by the hand. Sometimes she would pick me up and carry me as such. Sometimes she would pick me up and I'd ride on the back. And when we got to the plantation where she was taking me at, I was introduced to a lady by the name of Aunt Katie. Now, Aunt Katie was stern, mean, and she didn't play. And I think she had a hatred for me. She was a slave, too. As a matter of fact, one time, I was trying to get something to eat, and she spanked me on my hand like 3 or 4 times. And it just so happened that my mother came in. And my mother got into a verbal squabble with Aunt Katie, and she said, don't you never touch my baby again. Never. And me, a little child, you know, I stood there with a little smirk on my face because my mama was there to protect me. But unfortunately, after my mother left, and maybe about 3, 4, 5 hours later, she was back on me again. But during this time when my grandmother took me there, she took me and she said, little Frederick, go out and play. I said, no, Grandma, I want to stay with you. Go out and play. No, Grandma, I want to stay with you. Well, eventually I wound up and I went out to the backyard, and come to find out, not only were there kids out there, but my brother was out there and my 2 sisters was out there playing. And my brother came to me and he said, Frederick, come play. And I said, no, leave me alone. I want to stay with here and I want to go home with my grandma. And my brother said, Frederick, Grandma gone. granny anywhere. So I have you know, I ran back outside and I sat down and I sat there maybe about 30 minutes just crying because my grandma Betty was gone. I know you're wondering who my father claimed to be. My father, they say, is a white man, Aaron Anthony. They called him Captain Anthony. And they called him Captain Anthony because on the weekends he would put his sailor cap on and he would go out to the Chesapeake and he would sail his sailboat. So they called him Captain Anthony. Now, you must know that though I was his illegitimate son, he still did not play. If I deserved a whipping, or sometimes if I didn't deserve a whipping, he would whip me. And I'll let you know he had a sister. His sister was Lucretia Odd. Now, the funny thing about this, Miss Lucretia did not know that I was her little brother. However, her not knowing that I was her little brother, she still gave me privileges. And I want to contribute that to what I call G-E-N-E-S, genes. Our genes were alike, and automatically she was drawn not knowing that I was her little brother. So she would just about give me all that I desired, not knowing, again, that I was her